The primary purpose for an enterprise architect is to make sure that there's cohesion between business decisions and business direction, business outcomes that the organization is looking to achieve, and being able to support and underpin that with technology in a way that is sustainable, in a way that allows the organization to grow and expand and scale when the world rapidly changes around you, but for all no longer fits. And that's when businesses need to start looking at alternative options. And that's where you have this breakout to best-of-breed solution, whether it's in the CRM space or in the supply chain space or even in the AI marketplace, because many of these solutions no longer have or didn't have the ability to embed AI into these processes. And therefore they were a slow follower where the rest of the market was moving ahead at a rate of knots. I would argue in today's day and age, which company could really say that speed isn't a challenge? The ability to adapt and that agility is just fundamental for participating in an active economy today.
Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. Today, I have with me Junior Brandt. He's the Chief Architect and CEO of Valere. And anyone who wants to brush up on their Latin, it means stronger together, something I just learned. So I'm excited about that. But listen, Junior has decades of enterprise architecture experience in very large companies like Walgreens, Boots, Alliance, Medtronic, Kingfisher, Marks and Spencer, and so on. And he's also active in the Chief Architect Network. And so in this series of podcasts that I've done, I've talked to CIOs, I talked to integration practitioners, but I've always been looking for that interaction with, the perspective of an enterprise architect, and what enterprise architecture means in the context of the new automation mindset and a platform like Workato. So really excited to have a Junior here today with me. Junior, just to kick that off, enterprise architecture, give us a little, you've done this for a long time. Give us a little bit of an introspection into the mindset of an enterprise architect. How do you tick? How do your colleagues tick? And how's that maybe different from, how a CIO works and an integration practitioner and, help us a little bit understand what enterprise architects do and what they are and how they think.
Markus, thank you. I suppose the biggest thing to understand from a architecture mindset is, I suppose by comparison, when you think about a typical CIO is largely concerned with the management of operational IT and making some, strategic IT decisions. Whereas an architect's perspective to that is slightly more cohesive in terms of how that fits into achieving a number of things. So I suppose the primary purpose for an enterprise architect is to make sure that there's cohesion between business decisions and business directions, business outcomes that the organization is looking to achieve, and being able to support and underpin that with technology in a way that is sustainable, in a way that allows the organization to grow and expand and scale. It is, I suppose, somewhat more focused on the cohesion between business processes, the technology, the people. There's elements of all of those components in play. Whereas, again, by contrast, an integration practitioner might focus more particularly on the exchange of data between two things and making two or more systems talk to each other. Again, probably more focused on the technical level. An EA would focus on understanding what that means in context of value to the business. How is that process that you're executing, how that technical thing that you're delivering actually translating into business value?
Mm. And I think that, the term architect is sometimes also used different ways. I mean, I've talked to some people that come from an engineering background who think like, okay, well, a developer at some point becomes like a technical architect. I don't think that's exactly what we're talking about here, but I think there's this concept of business architecture, which now is a grander scheme. How would you explain? I mean, I've heard the term solution architect. How would you kind of say, like, what kind of shapes and shades of enterprise architects are there?
There's a variety of views on the topic, and yes, you're right. Architecture is typically described in a domain focused way around technical architecture, solution architecture, data architecture, security architecture. Throw any kind of descriptive word in front of it, and you can put an architect behind that. The business architecture element, however, is generally more focused around the underpinning of the business capabilities and how they lead from strategy development into essentially execution from a business perspective. And that might be containing concepts like value chains and how that allows the business to not only map, but understand and then underpin with technology how they execute against that particular piece. What we see all the time, though, is the boundaries between those domains are extremely blurred, and is almost entirely dependent on the context in which the question is asked. Somewhat. Some organizations have very clear definition between the two, separate domains. Others have a slightly more holistic approach whereby the domains cross over far more. You will also come across now where there's distinction made between enterprise architecture or whether it's just architecture. And it is a point of perspective in the organization, and is largely dependent on the culture of the organization, how that's interpreted.
Mm. No, that makes sense. All right, so we understand what an enterprise architect is. Curious what's going on like right now in 2025 in the mind of an EA. Like, what are the big themes? Are there any trends that are happening? What are when you get together with a chief architect network, like what are the topics you guys are discussing like right now?
Good, with a little bit without saying, obviously AI is at the forefront of everybody's conversation, but I'll park that one for a second, because it's no longer about AI as a disruptive technology, but more about, okay, what does that mean in context of the organization? How is it applied, and so forth. So a lot of what we're seeing at the moment is around a move away from the traditional kind of monolithic ERP centric approaches to some of the larger organizations, whereby there's appreciation that the need for the business to be able to scale and adapt to the changing business environment so quickly. That approach of a single monolithic ERP is just no longer fit for purpose. And we're seeing organizations very rapidly exploring composable architecture, saying, how do I get the best of breed for this particular topic that I'm trying to address, and make that work with some of my core business processes? Naturally, that kind of ties straight into that automation and integration topic, and saying, okay, if I'm going to be breaking apart my monolithic ERP centric view of the world, and I'm going to have disparate best of breed solutions to deal with very specific business problems that is unique to my organization in that shape, I need to be able to make sure that these things can talk to each other effectively, efficiently, in real time, with a seamless experience from both sides, both from the ERP perspective as well as from the particular functional area that it's involved in. Other big topics, sustainability, green IT, front of mind in a lot of our customers' view now. There's a significant drive for real understanding from architecting for sustainability, deep engagement around understanding the true environmental cost of compute and how we leverage that in the organization. Other big topics that really underpin a lot of the AI conversation is the concept around data fabric. If you are to leverage AI, the thing that underpins AI is data and how that data is federated, consolidated, then moderated, and so on. So those are the kind of big ticket topics at the moment.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I hear that, when people talk about Gen AI, I think data fabric comes up all the time because obviously, it's the underpinning. With like bad data, you're going to have bad AI decisions.
Absolutely.
Now, look, when we started Workato, it was actually what we saw was this trend with SaaS applications, cloud applications coming that moved to the cloud. That was one of the drivers why we felt compelled to kind of create a platform like Workato. But then I'm just curious because yesterday I was with another customer. We had a conversation. Workato grew tremendously during COVID, quadrupled basically as a company in size. And the customer asked me, so why do you think that was, Markus? Like what happened? And so, the more and more we talked about it, it felt like, I do think that COVID obviously tested the concept of agility to respond to like an unexpected event happening. And I do think that that probably had an impact. So I'm just curious, my question to you, just as a follow-up, is COVID and what that meant to enterprise architecture and, what kind of discussions happened, because it feels like it was that black swan event. It was that thing that nobody expected. And I imagine it really tested enterprise architectures. If you're in this monolithic architecture, you're almost like you're stuck. I'm curious. I mean, I'm curious about your opinion about COVID and what it meant.
It really was a bit of a watershed moment, Markus, just as you described. I think in many cases, COVID and the COVID pandemic was almost the ultimate test for many architects out there, and many architects had to effectively fall on their blade during that time because the underpinning construct of having a scalable, agile enterprise was instantaneously put to the test. And let's be frank, most organizations struggled, if not failed, and realized that it failed. We generally hear the term the new normal because it was exactly that. Everything we knew wasn't the case anymore. So yes, absolutely. From an architecture perspective, those kind of catalyst events really drive not only a change in approach and a change of thinking, but it really puts the architecture practice within an organization to the test, and it really supports the agility and the agility that's required by the business to achieve those outcomes. A number of really challenging situations occurred during that time. Many organizations had to almost instantaneously change from typical brick and mortar retail, for instance. Huge impact where almost instantaneously within the space of a 6-week period, companies had to be able to pivot to dealing and trading online. Now, you think, okay, we're in 2025, that's not such a big deal, but actually 3 years ago, there was still a very large brick and mortar footprint as there is today. But so many companies had to just fundamentally change most dimensions of things like their supply chain, their channels to customers, all of which required new technology, new ways of thinking. It needed to happen uh, under constrained budgetary environments. People had to make quick decisions that didn't cost a fortune because there wasn't fortunes to be had. Revenue was impacted all around. Um, and it really kind of created an environment whereby really creative means had to be found to automate things, to leverage automation. And that's really where tools like Workato really shone, and which is why you would have seen that enormous growth, is because it allows for that rapid integration, making data flow seamlessly across a multitude of applications and landscapes and so forth. So it really played to the need of the time, which was agility, simplicity, cost. And I think that's what caused that significant growth, Mark.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I would say the larger enterprises, the more traditional enterprises, let's say, were very, I'd say not receptive to Workato before the pandemic. And that somehow shifted. It was that, everyone said like, well, do you have that on premise also? And, we always said like, look, no, that's not why we built this. We believe that there's really a strong benefit of being cloud native and because it drives the agility and all of those things. And then COVID just broke that watershed. People were ready to go cloud native because they had to be quick and fast, and the traditional ways just wouldn't cut it. We've seen the retailers that you described that had to go online and then realized, oh, wait a second, it's like, if I do that, I have to do X number of integrations, and it's going to take me like 7 years with the traditional ways. That wasn't feasible. We're actually seeing the after effects also. Unfortunately, some industries had seen like really a big adversity. And so there's bankruptcies happening. Some companies got maybe acquired by other ones, and now they're reinventing their IT. They're basically rethinking enterprise architecture almost, and maybe realizing that how inefficient it was before, and how like non-agile it was before. And then the funny thing is, obviously, so you had the COVID pandemic, and then not very short thereafter, like 2022, I think it was, the ChatGPT arrived, right? And now you got another, I don't know, call it black swan event that no one, I don't think, expected that this would happen. And so now you have to reshuffle again. So I think one of the questions I had, I think we started answering already, is kind of like, so we defined the enterprise architect, the trends. Why does an enterprise architect care about something like a Workato, like the new automation mindset? Maybe in a different way, you can describe like how that new world looks like from the different world. I mean, the world almost like, let's say, the world before the COVID pandemic, and how an enterprise architect maybe felt comfortable to now. What is the new technology stack, landscape? What does that look like? And why does that maybe need something like a Workato?
Let me try and answer the question this way. So you touched on two things during your statement question as it came out. There was agility. That's the number one thing. The need for speed was absolutely accelerated by two quick, successive, disruptive events. Many organizations very quickly, and unfortunately in some cases in the very hard way, learned that agility was absolutely key to their survival, and unfortunately many didn't survive in that process, as you said. The second element, as you described, during that time, companies were realizing that to achieve that agility, the adoption of cloud native services, the rapid adoption of best of breed solutions for very specific business problems, became the quickest and easiest way to achieve the business outcome at the speed that was required. And to do that, it forced the architecture practice, the architect in charge, to look outside of their normal comfort zone of working within technology stacks that are possibly under their own operational control, the traditional data center that they have access to that might either no longer be economically viable or fast enough, bluntly. So it forced a scenario whereby the modern architect had to adopt and embrace approaches around composable architecture, saying, how do I put together component parts that as a whole achieve every requirement that the business has, every business objective that needs to be achieved from that strategy that comes down from the board that dictates the survival of that organization during these large watershed moments. Naturally, as you said, AI had such an enormous implication on so many businesses out there. And even today, that's, we're a year or 2 years in, that kind of growth trajectory around the maturity of AI is changing us so rapidly that even those of us at the forefront of AI technology, it's an ongoing struggle to keep up. We'd recently had the whole DeepSeek reveal, and it just threw the whole AI market up in arms again, and said, well, hang on, we've just demonstrated that even within those watershed moments, you have yet another disruptor in place. So all of those contribute to being able to achieve the business outcome, achieve it with agility, remain competitive in your market. You will almost certainly still have all of the legacy components that are core to the business to be there. And you need to be able to juggle all of those dimensions. And that's where a tool like Workato comes into play for us from an architecture perspective, because it's an underpinning enabler that allows you to do all of those things, connect all of the legacy systems that might have some of your core processes embedded, but at the same time being able to adopt some of these composable architecture components that really rapidly allows the architect to put forward a solution to a business requirement really quickly.
So it gives you speed, it gives you flexibility, and it enables, I think that's an important term. It enables like a composable architecture,
Correct.
I guess a non-monolithic kind of approach. Look, the funny thing is, if you think about like the ERP-centric approach to a technology stack, I do think it was driven by the fact that integration was very hard, and also composing, I guess, is hard. Maybe it just means enterprise architecture is hard. Thinking about these business processes is hard. So maybe a safer approach is just to, go to a vendor and just buy it as is, like not think about it. It's like building the house or buying the house pre-built, because you don't have to worry about thinking like what the kitchen should look like and what the bathroom should look like and so on. But then the downside is that when a disruptive event happens, you kind of in a way stuck in that monolith, right? Is that how you're looking at the ERP? And
your analogy is perfect, Markus. It's like buying a house off plan, getting the house and then realizing that you don't actually like the kitchen, but you're in the house already, you've moved in, and having the kitchen replaced is expensive, and it doesn't functionally add much to the organization. Even if you were to redo the kitchen, you might like it, but it will still just be a kitchen. What these watershed moments called is a scenario whereby actually we didn't want to cook in the kitchen anymore. We wanted to have al fresco dining, and we wanted to prepare food outside, and we didn't have an entertainment area or a barbecue area that could be leveraged, and that's where people fell out of love with that monolithic ERP approach by and large. And in many cases, some of the larger vendors in the ERP space, they sold a set of predefined business processes. And when you buy into these, you don't buy the technology, you don't buy the software, you buy the years and millions and billions of dollars that's been invested in defining but for all business processes. When the world rapidly changes around you, but for all no longer fits. And that's when businesses need to start looking at alternative options. And that's where you have this breakout to best of breed solutions, whether it's in the CRM space or in the supply chain space or even in the AI marketplace, because many of these solutions no longer have or didn't have the ability to embed AI into these processes. And therefore they were kind of a slow follower where the rest of the market was moving ahead of their rate of knots.
Mm-hmm. You know, the one other thing, so if you talk to Vijay, our CEO, he always, you know, he's lived integration for a long time. He's seen a lot. He always talks about that people have to integrate their integration tools, because the fact is that a lot of the integration technologies, it's kind of tool belt. If we stick with building the house kind of analogy of the enterprise architect, they're different things you need to do. One thing that Vijay is really feels strongly about, is passionate about, is to provide that one unified platform that gives you something you can feel comfortable that you can actually attack any possible integration challenge. So, you know, we talked about AI and that data fabric is really getting important. Like, well, we're making an effort at Workato to really build out data integration capabilities very strongly. You know, it might be about APIs, right? Maybe sometimes you still have good old file-based integration, or, you know, you have B2B integration, EDI, and so on. Maybe you have to, at some point in a business process, add a human step in there. You know, our ambition as Workato is to kind of, you have a platform, the complexity is reduced, you're faster, but you can do also everything that you possibly have to do. What does that mean for an enterprise architect to have like this unified platform?
It is, Markus, it's such a unifying component that underpins so much. Being able to deliver an integration capability that provides a unified approach to all of these various protocols and abilities to bring these things together, you know, regardless of whether you have an approach to democratize your integration into either your IT organization or even into the business itself. Having a consistent approach in terms of how that's being done in a unified platform is phenomenally valuable to an architect. The reasons for that we can touch on a little bit later, but there's already the ability to bring that into a single platform that is managed and cohesively put together addresses a number of concerns from an architecture perspective as well. So really fundamentally enables the architect to propose a diverse solution set. So when we spoke about the composable architecture and having all of these constituent parts in the landscape, bringing those things together in a cohesive way is now no longer an additional technical challenge.
And so what are the specific things? I mean, you know, when we work with customers, like governance of the whole thing. Obviously, even things like training, like if a recipe can do multiple different things, I guess you have to train for one skill in a way, not multiple That's skills.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So look, governance in any low-code platform is always going to be top of mind for an enterprise architect, but you will always take into consideration A strong security posture is incredibly important for all architects in this day and age. Being able to integrate that into a pre-existing security framework is going to be incredibly important for an architect as well. I think there's always concerns around some of the more traditional considerations around long-term scalability and maintenance, understanding that things are now cloud native and the accountability and responsibility for having to maintain that infrastructure is now effectively divested into the platform. That's a key consideration. One other thing that an architect will always kind of take into consideration is vendor locking, and really understand how vendor locking is influenced by your approach to integration and the likes, which allows us at the moment with a platform like Workato, because it creates such a diverse ability set, all unified in one platform. Yes, there is a vendor locking consideration, but the benefits significantly outweigh the challenges that it creates.
It seems like what it does, Workato, I guess it has two angles. Workato makes it possible to choose your stack components more easily, like the technologies or applications, for example. It makes it easier to pick and choose of components. It obviously is a platform that you buy in, which it makes sense. Listen, we talked about ERP and kind of ERP or monolith ERP approach, and how that was driven by the fact that, what Workato made simpler was hard and took a long time, and people maybe wanted to avoid it. There's this other technology that we've seen kind of like grow very rapidly, I would say like 2015 to 2020 is RPA. I always call RPA kind of the revenge of the hard to use integration tools, because that it had to be done, and so when business people found I can do that on the screen, they're like, okay, well, let's go for it. What's your take? I'm curious about an enterprise architect's take on RPA.
RPA saw a massive adoption because it offered a quick win for automation without requiring significant system changes. However, we've learned that RPA isn't enough. It's about intelligent automation that combines a couple of things, and then it talks about, okay, well, API-led integration wherever possible. That becomes really difficult with an RPA tool. You have RPA tools that, the hype around RPA was largely driven around legacy system interaction. In some cases, even, dare I say, old green screen mainframe terminals and the likes. But it very quickly became not good enough. The moment we had AI and machine learning come into the process, those type of things were then limited by user impersonation, which is what RPA enables. And that's, I think, where that watershed moment occurred as well, where RPA came to a point whereby its usefulness reached its maximum, and you need to have both the RPA capability as well as the integration capability. And then, just to complicate matters, we then realized that actually we need to be able to string these things together, and that then became orchestration. And those are the elements that Workato has then done a fantastic job of bringing together.
Yeah. The one thing I always feel, again, we talked about GenAI driving data. To me, RPA, the one thing that it is lacking is the fact that, you can do data-driven processes. Because RPA is just really the step-by-step automation of what a person does. But kind of re-engineering the process, making it better or more innovative with leveraging data that might not be used, that's something that RPA really isn't made for, in a way. And I believe it's going to be more important in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. with RPA, as I said before, its purpose is typically to emulate user interaction, and yes, it can scale that user interaction much faster than you could put, hand on keyboard, if you like. The problem you have with that is the scalability and the fact that every time you have underlying system changes, that RPA needs to be updated as well, and it created an unsustainable scenario. The other big challenge we see from an architecture perspective is the way in which, as you said, it was a little bit of the revenge of of a non-technical integration approach. But what it's created is the interaction between RPA tools and some of the larger ERP platforms, for instance, is the way in which it's been done in such a way that it is user-centric, kind of takes away the value proposition of the underlying integration capability that is far more scalable from the ERP solution. So you are typically limited only by what can be achieved in bulk by a user interaction. And, those are one of those topics as well that just scaled better the moment you took the user-centric perspective out of the transaction.
No, makes sense. And to me, it always brings back, I don't know if you remember the famous Jeff Bezos mandate to do APIs at Amazon 2002. It was a long time back, actually, where I think he was one of the early ones to recognize the importance of APIs. And to me, it seems like RPAs just
ignored that,
almost ignored that in a way. And I think now what we're saying, it's you got to use APIs. It's just I think he got something right, Jeff Bezos, in 2002 when he said what he did. But listen, I'm curious. So look, it's probably no secret that you buy into a platform like Workato and the power for an enterprise architect. But not every one of your colleagues does. Not every enterprise architect has that view. I'm curious of how you look at this. Like how do you explain that maybe someone doesn't? Or like what are the fears, what are the concerns in the enterprise architecture community with a platform like Workato? Why do people stick to the ERP-centric approach, maybe not go composable? I'm just curious. I wanted to hear, because you probably talk to some of these people when you're in your network.
I'm very fortunate. I can fortunately say, at least in the Chief Architect Network, we have a group of very forward-thinking, progressive chief architects, and I'm very happy to say that they lead some of the largest practices for Fortune 500 companies across the world, which is fantastic. But you're correct. There are still those architects that are concerned with fundamental topics. Governance is always a big topic. I think I mentioned some of that a little bit earlier, as around governance in a low-code environment, especially when there's a desire to promote democratization of that work into the business. That's a really scary thing for a traditionalist architect, because how do I control all of those things? How do I make sure that I don't have inadvertent impact to my core systems? Many of the security concerns, as I mentioned earlier as well, I think is a real topic. Being able to maintain control of a largely distributed cloud native solution, that's a difficult thing to do today. I always find that quite a unique topic of conversation. Some architects are entirely comfortable with buying into a public cloud infrastructure, whether that's AWS, Azure, GCP, whatever the case might be, but then buy into a cloud infrastructure in which they're going to be using, running, executing all of their compute and all of their data how, but then wanting to not engage in the same platform running all of their core integration. And that's sometimes a little bit of a paradigm shift in terms of what, okay, so if that's okay to you, why isn't this other problem okay? I think by and large, it's around, you also have architects that is of the opinion that building things by hand is internally good for the organization, retaining the intellectual property and really delivering engineering that allows the control to remain and be specified to the company. That's a view that's held by some architects as well. Architecture as a practice is it's a profession, and in the same way that you have some doctors that would prescribe a particular medication for a particular disease, you have other doctors that would prescribe something else. So it's a very objective view that the core functionality there is obviously for it to be right for the organization.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes sense. I mean, I think this is understandable. For us, I think a lot of it comes down to the low code aspect of Workato, I believe. For us, it's
easy.
just, I do think sometimes we get this reaction where because all that complexity is reduced, and to be honest, it actually took quite a bit of engineering to reduce that complexity. So it's actually not easy. It looks easy at the end, but that was the point. I think what people don't see is the strong engineering underneath. And again, there was the point as well, but I think the perception is like, well, right. It can't handle my complexity. Maybe I don't have control, as you said. I think there's a good one. There's this dichotomy of like, do I want to have all the programming, or, can I just go and get to the point, configure the business process in a way, but then I'm giving that away. But, I think you have to work this out and maybe see it with your own hands of how this kind of works in reality, in practice.
And that's, Markus, you've absolutely articulated that so particularly well, in that one thing that Workato has done particularly well, as I say, is the abstraction of the complexity away from the user. That doesn't mean the complexity isn't there. It just means that the complexity isn't seen. And by virtue of that simplicity that is perceived by the end user, as you say, there's sometimes a perception that it's not capable of coping with really complicated business scenarios. And I can, out of experience and engagements that we've been involved in, I can categorically confirm that it is a enterprise-wide ready platform that is capable of dealing with pretty much every scenario we have come across so far. It is phenomenally powerful.
No, that's good to hear. Yeah, look, it always. I think back, one of our early customers. It's a very fast-growing tech company at the time, and we actually worked with the enterprise architect there. And she actually, she was a Java coder. She had worked in development actually in the past, and then she had a career using traditional integration tools. One of the tools she used a lot was MuleSoft. And we sat and we showed her Workato, and she said, "Look, Markus, I know I can do all these integrations. I can do them with MuleSoft. I could code them if I wanted to. I can do it. I've done Java." But, the point is that I know that I couldn't ever do it as quickly as my business actually needs it right now. So I could do it, and I would fail at the same time. And she said, I have a feeling that with Workato, I could actually do it and do it fast enough. I think it comes back to that flexibility and adaptability and agility
right.
kind of what we just prioritize. And I think if that matters to a company, then maybe it doesn't make sense to just code it all or keep control of the infrastructure, because all of those things are enemies of being fast in a way.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct. And I would argue in today's day and age, which company could really say that speed isn't a challenge? The ability to adapt and that agility is just fundamental for participating in an active economy today.
Yeah. Listen, this is already fascinating. I do want to talk a little bit about GenAI before we run out of time here. But the GenAI agents, I know that at the Chief Architect Network you did present on that topic recently. I'm just curious, what did you tell your colleagues? Like, what's your take on it? Where do you see opportunities? Maybe where do you see concerns? And how do you see this unfold?
A couple of things. So the talk I gave in Chicago was primarily focused around understanding, or at least positioning and understanding of agentic AI and the advent of AI agents being able to interact with each other and to, again, no pun intended, but to orchestrate an automated business process by virtue of being able to interact amongst each other. That's a huge thing that is quite topical at the moment. I mean, what we see an awful lot with organizations, because at heart, Valere is an enterprise architect and integration architect, a consultancy. That's what we do. We customers engage us and say, come and help us with this problem and how we would architect around that. Probably a number one problem that we see today is, yes, there's all of the enormously impressive agentic AI components and things that you can do with it. That's great. 95% of our clients are still trying to just get the basics out of AI to work well for their business. And when and I'm by no means trying to play that down, but simple things like automated customer interaction, sentiment analysis, things that we know and have known for the last 2 years that ChatGPT or any one of the LLM models are particularly good at. Our clients and some of the large organizations are seeing that and really struggling to truly embed that into their business processes, because the entry point for AI in the organization is complicated and it's difficult to secure and analyze. And again, this is where we've leveraged an iPaaS solution to enable those type of things and saying, oh, actually, we are already exchanging data between systems, and we're already taking things from our CRM system and interacting with the call center or whatever the case might be. Injecting context-sensitive AI into those processes in small batches is the things that really add value to the customers right now, and that's the entry point for AI into the organization. We have such an enormous uptake of AI-driven decision-making frameworks around stipulating how workflows are executed. We use that within the architecture practice itself around decisioning frameworks, sentiment, metric analysis, and saying, okay, assess an architecture, identify core challenges. Those type of elements, AI is very, very effective in accelerating the process as well. And then naturally, you've got, if you live by the sentiment that AI is the future and you're going to have engagement with AI, then API-led integration to interrogate and interact with these AI models is absolutely necessary. For having that strong AI API capability is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah. No, very good point. I mean, look, it feels like it's such a rapid fire on the GenAI side, how this is evolving. I remember, it started with ChatGPT and everyone thought it's just, AI is just something you talk to and get English language back. And then I think people realized, well, wait a second, it's like I can think of this LLM with APIs just as like I integrate with the system. Why can I in the part of a I think that's what you described as the real quick wins, and I totally agree. It's like, okay, well, you can orchestrate, you can integrate with business systems, you can you leverage the data in a data warehouse. By all means, use your LLM that you have to, I don't know, read emails or summarize text or do whatever you have to do as part of a business process. That is a total quick win. And then I think we very quickly moved on to these AI agents where now it changes completely what a process is and how this is done, not step by step anymore, but with these digital twins.
That's right.
But maybe we skipped that middle phase too quickly. Maybe there's just a lot more things we can do quickly by just connecting, just like composable architecture, make that LLM a composition element of a composable architecture.
Absolutely correct. And we particularly focus around achieving demonstrable value execution through AI. And yes, every company out there has some kind of AI project underway at the moment around large, even developing their own LLMs and so forth. Those are great. And I by no means want to discourage any organization to go and do those things within the bounds of what's relevant to the organization. But it's the smaller AI embedding of AI capability into day-to-day processes that deliver the most value in the shortest possible time. And that's where you build the business confidence in AI, which is the one thing that you would then need to apply to those larger AI projects. Demonstrate the value.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the one thing I'm really excited about, and I imagine you're seeing this. Like, look, I was joking with another customer about this. iPaaS integration is just not like a dinner party conversation. It's like, people, either you need it or it's a key enabler. It's so important, but people just don't want to talk about it. It's almost like, if we stick with that house analogy, the plumbing and the electrical lines in the walls, they're really important for you, but I don't think anyone they want to talk about the beautiful marble countertop in the kitchen, right? They don't want to talk about the plumbing. I feel that the AI agents and the new LLMs and how that fits into a business process, that is a dinner party conversation. I think Absolutely. People are seriously curious, and maybe it'll actually, make enterprise architecture really cool, and that people want it because you need it at the end of the day.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Junior, this was just what I expected. I was really curious. Look, I wish that more IT leaders had that enterprise architect mindset. We talk about the new automation mindset, but I think the enterprise architect mindset, that is really important. I have a feeling like with GenAI and so on, we're gonna get our moment of glory. I like what like Amazon and the internet was to retailers. My feeling is to like business architecture and like business processes. I think it's happening right now with the AI agents. But again, maybe it's not that I have to wish for that enterprise architect mindset. Maybe it'll happen. But thank you so much for spending the time with us here. I hope the audience really learned from what you had to say. And I think enterprise architect mindset, it really matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Markus. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.